The royal palace stretched across the sky like a mountain made of crystal and light. Mino pushed his cleaning cart down the long hallway, his footsteps barely making a sound on the polished floor. It was 2 in the morning and the palace was quiet. This was his favorite time to work. No nobles looking through him like he was invisible. No guards telling him to hurry up and move along. Minho was 28 years old and had been cleaning these halls for 3 years. He came from Earth, from a place called Sol Station Colony. His family had borrowed money to travel to Valorian space, hoping for a better life. They found work, but the debt was huge. So Minho took this job. The pay was decent and he could send money home. He didn't mind the work. Cleaning gave him time to think, time to notice things. And in a place like the royal palace, there was always something interesting to notice. Tonight he could hear shouting from the royal wing. That wasn't unusual anymore. For the past 6 months there had been shouting almost every week, sometimes every day, all because of the queen's twin children. Prince Veltor and Princess Kixana were only 6 months old, but they were already famous across 3 galaxies. Famous for being impossible to handle, the twins had driven away 17 nannies, 17 highly trained, highly paid experts from 12 different alien species. Each one had quit and some had left crying. Minho had seen 3 of them leave. The first was a tall being made of blue energy. She had lasted 2 weeks. The second was covered in fur and had 6 arms. She made it 9 days. The third had been a floating crystal creature that everyone said was the smartest nanny in the Empire. She quit after 3 days. The palace staff whispered about it constantly. Some said the twins were cursed. Others said they were just too intelligent for their own good. A few thought they were simply cruel, like some children could be. Minho didn't think any of those things were true. He had seen the twins a few times, always from a distance. They didn't look cruel. They looked frustrated. More shouting echoed from the royal wing. Then a loud crash. Then silence. Minho kept pushing his cart. Whatever was happening, it wasn't his business. He was just the night janitor. Nobody important. 20 minutes later, he reached the corridor outside the royal nursery. The door was open, which was strange. Usually it was locked and guarded. He peeked inside and stopped moving. The room looked like a storm had hit it. Furniture was turned over. Expensive decorations were broken on the floor. The walls had scorch marks. In the middle of all this mess, a tall alien woman sat on the ground, her head in her hands. She was the crystalline nanny, the one everyone said was the best. "Are you okay?" Minho asked quietly. The nanny looked up. Her face, made of transparent crystal, showed cracks that hadn't been there before. "They trapped me," she said, her voice shaking. "For 6 hours. 6 hours. They reprogrammed the security system. They're 6 months old and they reprogrammed military-grade security." Minho stepped inside carefully, avoiding the broken pieces. "Where are they now?" "Sleeping. Finally sleeping." The nanny stood up slowly. "I quit. I know that makes me number 17, but I don't care. I have worked with difficult children across 50 star systems. I have never met anyone like those 2. She walked past Minho toward the door, then stopped. "Do you know what the worst part is? They're not mean. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They're just bored. So incredibly bored that they create chaos just to feel something interesting." Then she left, her footsteps clicking away down the hall. Minho stood in the destroyed nursery, thinking about what she said. Bored. That made sense. He started cleaning up, moving quietly so he wouldn't wake the twins. As he worked, he looked at the damage more carefully. The furniture wasn't just knocked over randomly. It was arranged in a pattern. The scorch marks on the walls formed shapes almost like writing. The broken decorations had been taken apart in specific ways, like someone was studying how they were built. These weren't the actions of mean children. These were the actions of very smart children who had nothing good to do with their minds. Minho spent 2 hours cleaning. When he finished, the room looked almost normal again. He glanced at the sleeping area, separated by a force field. 2 small shapes were curled up under glowing blankets. One was purple-blue with multiple small arms. The other was silver with what looked like soft scales. The twins. They looked peaceful when they slept. Over the next 3 days, Minho heard the palace talking about nothing else. Queen Ixandra herself was getting desperate. The twins needed a caretaker. They were approaching an important development phase. Without proper guidance, they could become dangerous, not just to others, but to themselves. The Queen had sent messages to every corner of the Empire, asking for help. But news of the 17 failed nannies had spread. Nobody wanted the job. Nobody wanted to be number 18. Minho continued his normal work, cleaning the palace at night. But he started paying more attention to the royal wing. He noticed patterns in when the twins would have their episodes. It was usually in the evening, after they had spent all day with boring lessons or sitting still. They had too much energy and nowhere to put it. He also noticed that the twins destroyed certain things but never others. They never damaged anything that belonged to the servants. They never broke the simple toys, only the expensive, complicated ones. It was like they were making a point, though Minho doubted they fully understood what point that was. On his fourth night cleaning near the nursery, Minho heard it. A soft electronic beep, then another, then an alarm that quickly got cut off. He turned toward the nursery entrance just as two small figures squeezed through the door. The twins were escaping. Guards would arrive soon. The palace security system would lock everything down. The twins would be caught and dragged back, probably crying and fighting. And tomorrow everyone would talk about what bad children they were. Minho made a choice. Instead of calling for help, he turned back to his cleaning cart and started organizing his supplies. He hummed a song under his breath, one his grandmother had taught him back on Earth. It was simple and quiet, just a tune about stars and home. He heard small footsteps behind him. Fast, then slower, then stopping. He kept humming and kept working, acting like he didn't notice anything unusual. The footsteps came closer. Minho picked up a stack of towels and began folding them, still humming. From the corner of his eye, he saw a small silver head poke around his cart. Princess Kixana, watching him with large, curious eyes. Minho smiled but didn't stop what he was doing. The princess took a step closer, tilting her head. Her brother Veltor appeared behind her, his purple-blue skin glowing faintly in the dim hallway light. "What are you doing?" the prince asked in the universal language, his voice high and suspicious. "Folding towels," Minho answered simply, showing them how to make neat squares. The twins looked at each other. Then slowly they sat down on the floor to watch. That was how the palace guards found them 10 minutes later. Two royal children sitting quietly next to a human janitor, watching him work like it was the most interesting thing in the world. That was how Queen Ixandra found them too, summoned by her shocked security team. And that was how everything changed. Queen Ixandra stood in the doorway, staring at a scene she had never expected to see. Her children, the twins who had terrorized the most skilled caretakers in the empire, sat peacefully on the floor. They were watching a human janitor fold towels. Just watching. Not screaming, not destroying things, not trying to escape. Just sitting there with curious eyes. The queen was 400 years old and had ruled 3 galaxies. She had seen many strange things. But this might be the strangest. "You there," she said to Minho, her voice calm but commanding. "What is your name?" Minho turned and immediately bowed. He had never been this close to the queen before. She was tall even for a Valorian, with skin that shimmered like oil on water, forearms all decorated with royal marks, eyes that seemed to look right through him. "Minho, your majesty. I'm a janitor. Night shift. I can see what you are," the queen said. "What I cannot see is how you have done what 17 trained nannies could not do. My children are calm. They are sitting still. They are not trying to bite anyone or reprogram anything." Minho didn't know what to say to that. "I was just folding towels, your majesty." Princess Kixana tugged on his sleeve. "Show us the next part," she said. The queen's eyes widened. The guards behind her looked shocked. The princess had asked nicely. She had said please in her own way. The child who screamed demands at everyone had just asked politely. "How long have they been here?" the queen asked. "Maybe 10 minutes, your majesty." 10 minutes of peace. 10 minutes of normal behavior. The queen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she made a decision that would shock the entire royal court. "You will report to the nursery tomorrow at 8 in the morning. You are the twins' new caretaker." Minho almost dropped the towel he was holding. "Your majesty, I'm not trained. I'm just a cleaner. I don't know anything about raising royal children." "Clearly training means nothing with my children," the queen said. "Whatever you are doing, it works. That is all I care about. Will you accept?" Minho thought about his debt. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about the twins sitting quietly by his cart. "Yes, your majesty. I'll try." "Good. Your salary will be increased to match a royal educator's position. Report to the nursery at 8. The queen looked at her children. Veltor, Kixana, it is time for bed. Go with the guards. For a moment, Minho thought the twins would fight, but Princess Kixana stood up and took her brother's hand. They walked back to the nursery without arguing, though the princess looked back at Minho 3 times. After they were gone, Minho stood in the empty hallway, trying to understand what had just happened. Had he really just become a royal caretaker? Him, a janitor with no training? His friend Jisoo laughed so hard she nearly fell off her chair when he told her the next morning. Jisoo worked in the palace kitchens and was the only real friend Minho had made since coming to the Valorian capital. You're insane, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. Do you know what happened to the last nanny? She left in a medical transport. The queen ordered me to do it, Minho said. What was I supposed to say? No? Yes. You say no. You say sorry, Your Majesty, but I enjoy having my sanity. Jisoo shook her head. Those twins are famous, Minho. Famous for being impossible. And you think you can handle them because you folded towels? I don't think I can handle them, Minho admitted. But maybe they don't need to be handled. Maybe they just need something different. Different? They need a miracle. At 8 in the morning, Minho stood outside the royal nursery. He had barely slept. He wore his best clothes, which weren't very impressive. A guard opened the door for him without a word. Inside, the nursery had been cleaned and repaired again. The twins sat on expensive cushions, surrounded by educational displays and floating teaching orbs. A tall, thin alien in formal robes stood next to them. He introduced himself as Lord Thexmore, the Queen's chief advisor and the head of the Royal Education Committee. You are the human, Lord Thexmore said, looking down his long nose at Minho. I advised against this. However, the Queen has made her decision. These are the approved lesson plans. Follow them exactly. He handed Minho a data pad filled with schedules and instructions. Lessons about history, mathematics, language, culture, proper royal behavior. Every minute of the day was planned out. Minho looked at the schedule, then at the twins. They looked miserable, sitting still on their cushions like little statues. Princess Kixana saw him and her face brightened a little. Prince Veltor just looked suspicious. These lessons, Minho said slowly. Do the twins enjoy them? Lord Thexmore frowned. Enjoyment is not the purpose of education. Learning is the purpose, but they're 6 months old. Valorian royal children develop much faster than human children. By 6 months, they have the cognitive ability of what you would call a 6-year-old. They must learn to be future rulers. Now begin the morning language lesson. Lord Thexmore left and Minho was alone with the twins. He looked at the datapad again. Language lesson, section 12, subsection 4. It looked incredibly boring. He put the datapad down. Do you two want to learn languages today? He asked. No, both twins said at the same time. What do you want to do? The twins looked at each other, surprised. Apparently, no one had asked them that before. I want to know how things work, Prince Veltor said. I want to solve puzzles, Princess Kixana said. Minho thought for a moment. Okay, come with me. He took them out of the nursery, much to the shock of the guards. He led them through the palace, not to the grand halls or the learning centers, but down to the maintenance tunnels beneath the palace. The twins had never been in the tunnels. Their eyes went wide as they saw the pipes and machines and electrical systems that made the palace work. Minho showed them how water was purified and pumped through the building. He explained how the power systems distributed energy to different sections. This is engineering, he told Prince Veltor, pointing to a control panel. This is how things work. Every machine is a puzzle that someone solved. The prince stared at the panel like it was made of gold. Minho found a broken service robot in a maintenance bay. He showed Princess Kixana the circuit patterns inside it, the logical paths the electricity followed. This is like a puzzle, he said. Can you see the pattern? Can you find where it's broken? The princess leaned close, her large eyes scanning the circuits. After a moment, she pointed to a burned connection. There, that's wrong. You're right, Minho said. Good job. They spent 4 hours in the tunnels. The twins asked 100 questions. They touched things gently when Minho said it was safe, and stayed back when he said it was dangerous. They learned about pressure and electricity and mechanical systems. They got dirty and didn't care. When Minho brought them back to the nursery, Lord Thexmore was waiting and he did not look happy. Where have you been? You missed every scheduled lesson. We were learning, Minho said simply. Learning what? How to crawl around in dirt like commoners? Learning how things work. Learning to think. Learning to be curious. Lord Thexmore's face turned an angry shade of purple. This is unacceptable. The Queen will hear about this. Good, Minho said. She should know what her children are learning. That night, Minho was summoned to the Queen's private office. He thought he might be fired. Instead, the Queen asked him one question. Are my children happy? Minho thought about the light in their eyes in the tunnels. Yes, Your Majesty. Then continue what you are doing, the Queen said. But be careful. Not everyone in this court wants change. Minho bowed and left, not fully understanding what she meant. He would understand soon enough. 3 weeks passed and the palace was still talking about the human janitor who became a royal caretaker. Some people thought it was wonderful. Most thought it was a disaster waiting to happen. Lord Thexmore thought it was an insult to the entire empire, but nobody could argue with the results. The twins had stopped destroying things. They hadn't tried to escape once. They actually seemed happy, which was something no one had seen before. Minho's methods were unlike anything the Royal Education Committee had ever approved. Instead of sitting in the nursery with teaching orbs, the twins spent their days exploring. Minho took them to the kitchens to learn about chemistry through cooking. He took them to the gardens to understand biology. He brought them to the engineering bays to watch ships being repaired. Every experience was a lesson, but it never felt like a lesson. It felt like an adventure. Princess Kixana developed a love for patterns and codes. Minho taught her about encryption by showing her ancient human puzzles and lock systems. She could now open any standard security door in the palace, which worried the guards but impressed the Queen. Prince Veltor fell in love with machines. He could take apart and rebuild a service robot in under an hour. He understood how energy flowed through systems better than most adult engineers. But Minho taught them more than just technical skills. He taught them kindness. One day, Princess Kixana was playing with a small maintenance bot in the repair bay. She was trying to understand its programming, but she pushed too hard on a circuit board. Sparks flew. The bot stopped moving, its lights going dark. Kixana looked scared. In the past, when she broke things, adults got angry. She waited for Minho to yell. He didn't yell. He sat down next to her and looked at the broken bot. What happened? He asked quietly. I broke it. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to see how it worked. I know you didn't mean to, Minho said, but it's still broken. Do you know who uses this bot? Kixana shook her head. A maintenance worker named Drix. He's been using this bot for 5 years. It helps him reach high places because his species is short. Without it, his job is much harder. The princess looked at the bot with different eyes now. It wasn't just a toy or a puzzle. It was important to someone. What do I do? She asked in a small voice. First, we fix it. Together. Then, you apologize to Drix and explain what happened. They spent 2 hours repairing the bot. Kixana's small hands were perfect for the delicate work. When the bot powered on again, she smiled with relief. Finding Drix was harder. He was working in a far section of the palace. When he saw a royal princess approaching, he immediately bowed low, terrified. Royalty never spoke to workers like him. Sir, Kixana said formally, the way Minho had taught her, I broke your bot by accident. I fixed it, but I'm sorry I broke it in the first place. I should have asked before touching it. Drix stared at her, speechless. A royal had apologized to him. A royal child had called him sir. It's okay, Your Highness, he finally managed to say. These things happen. Still, Kixana said. I'm sorry. Later, Drix told everyone in the service quarters about it. The story spread. The royal twins were learning respect. They were learning that other people mattered. Lord Thexmore heard the stories too, and he didn't like them. In his view, royalty should be above common workers. They should command, not apologize. Minho was teaching the heirs to be soft, to be too friendly with servants. This was dangerous. He decided to prove that Minho's methods were a failure. The Queen was hosting a formal state dinner in 2 weeks. Ambassadors from 30 different star systems would attend. It was one of the most important events of the year. Lord Thexmore suggested that the twins should attend. They need to learn formal protocol, he told the Queen. They need to be seen by the Empire, and we need to see if this human's teaching has prepared them for real royal duties. The Queen hesitated. Her children had never attended a state dinner before. They were still very young. But Lord Thexmore was right about one thing: they needed to learn. Very well, she agreed. They will attend. For 1 hour. When Minho heard about it, his stomach dropped. A formal state dinner? With the twins? They had learned a lot, but sitting still for an hour, being polite to boring adults following strict rules, that was asking a lot from 6-month-old children, no matter how smart they were. He spent the next 2 weeks preparing them. He taught them about patience. He explained why formal events were important even if they were boring. He showed them how small gestures of respect could mean everything to people from different cultures. Why do we have to do this? Prince Veltor asked one day, frustrated. Why can't we just be ourselves? You can be yourself, Minho said. But being yourself doesn't mean ignoring others. These ambassadors traveled very far to see your mother. Showing them respect shows them that the Valorian Empire values them. That's important. More important than learning about engines? Sometimes, yes. A good ruler needs to know about engines, but a great ruler needs to understand people. The night of the dinner arrived. The grand hall was filled with hundreds of guests in elaborate clothing. Music played from floating instruments. Servants carried trays of food from dozens of different worlds. Minho helped the twins get dressed in formal royal clothes. They looked uncomfortable but determined. Remember, he told them. 1 hour. You can do anything for 1 hour. They entered the hall with their mother. Every eye turned to look at them. The room went quiet. Everyone knew about the twins and their reputation. Everyone expected chaos. The twins walked to their seats slowly and carefully. They sat down without knocking anything over. When adults spoke to them, they answered politely. When an elderly ambassador from a water world started telling a very long, very boring story about trade routes, Prince Veltor listened. He even asked a question that made the ambassador smile. Princess Kixana noticed that an insect-like ambassador was struggling to eat with the provided utensils. They were designed for beings with hands, not with mandibles. Kixana quietly asked a servant to bring different tools. The insect ambassador was so touched that she thanked the princess formally in front of everyone. But the moment that everyone remembered came near the end of the hour. An elderly ambassador, a being made of living stone, was walking to his seat. He was very old and moved slowly. He carried a ceremonial staff that marked his rank. As he walked past the twins' table, he stumbled. The staff fell from his hands and rolled toward Prince Veltor. The entire hall held its breath. This staff was sacred to the ambassador's people. No one else was supposed to touch it. Prince Veltor looked at the staff, then at the ambassador struggling to bend down. The prince thought about what Minho had taught him. About respect. About helping others. About understanding that some things were more important than rules. He stood up, walked to the staff, and carefully picked it up. He held it with both hands and carried it back to the ambassador. He bowed as he returned it, the way Minho had taught him to bow when returning something important. The stone ambassador stared at him. Then slowly he bowed back. Thank you, young prince. You show wisdom beyond your age. The hall erupted in polite applause. After the dinner, in the privacy of the royal chambers, Queen Ixandra spoke to Minho. You have done something I thought was impossible. You have taught my children to be both strong and kind. How? Minho thought carefully before answering. I just treated them like people, Your Majesty. Smart people who needed a reason to care, not just rules to follow. The queen nodded slowly. Perhaps that is what we have been missing. We teach our children to rule, but we forget to teach them to care. But not everyone was pleased. Lord Thexamore watched from the shadows, his mind working. The twins had succeeded tonight. That meant Minho had succeeded. And if Minho's human methods were accepted, everything Lord Thexamore believed about proper education would be questioned. He couldn't allow that. He began making plans that would put everyone in danger. 3 months after Minho became the twins' caretaker, the impossible had become normal. The twins were thriving. They were learning, growing, and most importantly, they were happy. The palace staff had stopped whispering about the human janitor. Now they whispered about how remarkable the changes were. But change always creates enemies. Lord Thexamore had spent those 3 months building alliances with others who feared what Minho represented. If a common human could succeed where the Empire's best had failed, what did that say about the Empire's methods? What did it say about the people in power? There were others in the royal court who didn't want those questions asked. Old families who had held power for centuries. Military leaders who valued tradition over innovation. They met in secret and they made plans. Minho knew none of this. He only cared about the twins. On the day everything changed, the Queen was hosting a royal procession through the capital city. This was a tradition that happened 4 times a year. The royal family would travel through the streets in a protected vehicle, and citizens would gather to see them. It was supposed to show that the Queen was connected to her people. Minho had asked if he could bring the twins. The Queen agreed. The twins had never been to a public event like this, and she wanted them to see the city and the people they would one day help rule. Security was tight. The royal vehicle was surrounded by guards. Drones flew overhead. Every building along the route had been checked. Nothing should have been able to go wrong. But Lord Thexmore's allies had spent months planning. They had people in the security force. They had access to military weapons that could disable shields and communications. They were willing to do anything to prove that the current royal family was too weak, too influenced by outsiders like Minho. The procession was halfway through the city when it happened. A blast of energy hit the royal vehicle from above. The shields flickered and died. The vehicle stopped dead in the water. Guards rushed to form a protective circle, but more blasts came from multiple directions. Minho threw himself over the twins, protecting them with his body. He felt the heat from energy weapons passing overhead. He heard the Queen shouting orders, trying to coordinate the confused guards. "Stay down," he told the twins. "Don't move." But the attackers had planned for this. Smoke bombs exploded around the vehicle, creating thick clouds that blocked vision. In the chaos, shapes moved through the smoke. Armed figures in dark armor. They weren't trying to kill anyone. They were trying to grab the twins. The Queen saw what was happening and fought like the warrior she had once been. Her forearms moved like lightning, taking down 3 attackers. But there were too many, and they had surprise on their side. A blast hit near the vehicle, and the force threw Minho backward. His head hit metal, and stars exploded in his vision. He saw blurry figures grabbing the twins. He tried to get up, tried to reach them, but his legs wouldn't work right. "Minho," Princess Kixana screamed. "We have them," one of the attackers shouted. "Move, move!" The armed figures ran into a nearby building, carrying the struggling twins. The Queen tried to follow, but a blast forced her to take cover. By the time the smoke cleared enough to see, the kidnappers and the twins were gone. The Queen's voice was terrible to hear. "Find them! Tear this city apart if you have to! Find my children." Guards poured into the building. Drones scanned from above, but the kidnappers had planned their escape well. The building connected to the underground maintenance tunnels, the same tunnels Minho had shown the twins months ago. Inside the building, Princess Kixana and Prince Veltor were being carried by 4 armed kidnappers. They were scared, but they were also thinking. Minho had taught them to always think, even when afraid. "Stop struggling," one kidnapper said. "We're not going to hurt you if you behave." But the twins noticed things. They noticed the kidnappers were using communication devices in their helmets. They noticed the devices all connected to a central signal. And Kixana, who had spent months learning about codes and signals, recognized the pattern. The kidnappers carried them down into the tunnels. It was dark and confusing down there, full of pipes and corridors that all looked the same. Perfect for hiding. The kidnappers thought they were safe. "Base, we have the targets," one kidnapper said into his helmet, proceeding to extraction point. Princess Kixana closed her eyes and focused. Minho had taught her to recognize patterns. She had learned so much about electronic systems in the past months. The signal from the helmets, she could feel it in the air, almost hear it. And she knew how to disrupt it. She hummed. A specific frequency, high and controlled. Her species could make sounds humans couldn't hear, sounds that could interfere with electronics. She'd learned this while playing with Minho's tablet. The helmets crackled with static. "What the?" one kidnapper said. "My comm is breaking up." "Mine too," another said. Kixana hummed louder. The helmet communications went completely dead. The kidnappers stopped walking, confused and now unable to talk to each other or their base. That was when Prince Veltor made his move. His brother remembered the tunnel maps Minho had shown them. He knew where they were. He knew which pipes were for water and which were for waste. He knew which controls did what. "Run," he shouted to his sister. The twins twisted free of the confused kidnappers and ran. They ran into the darkness of the tunnels, into the maze of corridors they had explored with Minho. Behind them, the kidnappers cursed and chased after them, but without communications, they couldn't coordinate. They split up, each one running down different tunnels. The twins ran together, Kixana following her brother's lead. Veltor navigated the tunnels from memory, left at the blue pipe, right at the junction, down the ladder to the lower level. He knew exactly where he was going, but they emerged into a section of tunnel that was blocked. The kidnappers had cut off this area. 3 armed figures stood between them and the exit. The twins were trapped. The kidnappers approached slowly, weapons ready. "No more tricks," one said. "Come quietly or—" That was when the lights went out. Not just in this tunnel, but in the entire section. Emergency lights flickered on, but they were dim and red. The kidnappers looked around confused. Then the air started to get thin. The ventilation system had been shut off in this area, and the atmosphere was being vented out. The kidnappers' helmets had air supplies, but the twins didn't. In a few minutes, they would pass out from lack of oxygen, except the air was only being vented from where the kidnappers stood. Where the twins crouched, air was still flowing. Someone was controlling the system very precisely, creating a safe pocket around the children. Through the dim red emergency lights, a figure appeared, limping with blood on his face but moving with determination. Minho. He had woken up from being knocked out, and his first thought was the twins. He knew where they would go. He knew the tunnels because he had shown the twins himself, and he knew how to control the maintenance systems because he had worked with them for years. "Get away from them," Minho said quietly. One kidnapper laughed. "You're just a janitor. What are you going to do?" Minho's hand was on a control panel. "I'm the janitor who knows every system in this palace. Do you know what happens if I press this button? The waste recycling system will flood this tunnel with water, very dirty water. Your helmets will protect you from the smell, but you'll still drown if you can't swim fast enough." He pressed the button. Alarms blared. The sound of rushing water echoed through the tunnels. The kidnappers looked at each other, then ran. They weren't being paid enough to drown in wastewater. Minho canceled the flood and restored the air. He knelt down and the twins ran to him. They hugged him tight and he hugged them back, ignoring the pain from his injuries. "I knew you'd find us," Princess Kixana whispered. "Always," Minho said. "I'll always find you." He took their hands and led them through the tunnels toward the Queen's secure chamber deep underground. But before they got there, Minho collapsed. The head injury was worse than he thought. The world spun and he fell. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was Princess Kixana crying. He had never heard her cry before. Minho woke up in a room filled with soft light. His head hurt, but the pain was distant, controlled by medicine. He tried to sit up and found he couldn't move much. Medical equipment surrounded him, keeping track of his body. Then he saw them. The twins were asleep in chairs beside his bed. Princess Kixana had her head on his arm. Prince Veltor was curled up holding Minho's hand. They looked so small and peaceful. They would not leave. Queen Exandra's voice came from the corner. Minho turned his head and saw her sitting there watching. "We tried to take them to their rooms. They screamed. They fought. They said they would stay with you or they would stay with no one." "How long was I asleep?" Minho asked, his voice rough. 2 days. You have a serious head injury. The doctor said you pushed yourself too hard, too long. You should have collapsed hours before you rescued my children." The Queen stood and walked to the bed. "You saved them. The security forces were still searching the city. You found them first." "I knew where they would go," Minho said simply. "I taught them about those tunnels." "Yes, and they used what you taught them to survive." The Queen's eyes were sad and proud at the same time. Kixana disrupted the kidnappers' communications. Veltor navigated the tunnels. They worked together. They stayed calm. They did exactly what you would have told them to do. They're smart kids. They just needed someone to believe in them. The Queen was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about why you succeeded where others failed. I have had 2 days to think about little else." "Do you know what I concluded?" Minho shook his head slightly, which made it hurt more. "Every caretaker before you approached my children as problems to be solved. They were challenges, puzzles, obstacles. Some caretakers tried to control them. Others tried to understand them as if they were broken machines. But you treated them as people, as individuals worthy of respect and patience and genuine care. This is what I call the human principle." "I don't understand," Minho said. "Humanity is not the oldest species. Not the strongest. Not the smartest by many measures. But humans have something that many older species have forgotten. You see people. Not categories, not types, not problems. You see individuals. You care about them as unique beings. The Queen touched her children's sleeping heads gently. We Valorians have become very good at efficiency and order, but we have forgotten how to simply care. She looked at Minho with an expression he couldn't quite read. The kidnapping was orchestrated by people within my own court. Lord Thexmore and his allies wanted to prove that my rule had become too soft, too influenced by outsiders. They did not mean for my children to be hurt, but they were willing to terrify them to make a point. Minho felt anger rise in his chest. Where is Thexmore now? In custody. The entire conspiracy has been exposed. But this showed me something important. There are many in the Empire who fear change. They fear what you represent. A simpler, more direct way of connecting with others. But my children's courage during the crisis has won public support. The entire Empire saw how they used their knowledge to survive. They saw them work together. They saw them act with intelligence and bravery. The Queen walked to the window looking out at the city. I'm making changes. Big changes. Valorian child-rearing practices will be reformed. We will study human approaches to education and emotional development, not to copy them exactly, but to learn from them, to remember what we have forgotten. That's good, Minho said. That's really good. And I want you to lead this change. I am offering you a position as royal educator. With full court status, you will have wealth, influence, the respect of the Empire. You will help shape how we raise our children for generations to come. It was everything Minho had never dreamed of having. Prestige, money, power. He could pay off his family's debt in a day. He could live in luxury. He could be important. But he thought about why he came to the Valorian capital in the first place. He thought about Earth, about home, about the thousands of families like his who struggled with debt and difficult choices. Your Majesty, he said carefully, I'm honored, but I want to ask for something different. Instead of making me important, use that money to create a scholarship program. Bring human educators from Earth to Valorian space. Teachers, caretakers, people who understand the human principle you talked about. Share knowledge both ways. Let humans learn from Valorians too. The Queen turned to look at him, surprised. You would refuse court status? Wealth for a scholarship program? I don't need to be important, Minho said. I just want to help. And I can help more by creating opportunities for others than by being one special case. What about my children? They need you. I'll stay with them. As their teacher, their caretaker, whatever you want to call it. I'll help them grow up. But I don't need fancy titles for that. The Queen smiled, and it was a real smile, warm and genuine. You prove your own point. You care about others more than yourself. Very well. We will create the scholarship program. It will be called the Human Principle Initiative, and you will lead it while remaining the twins' primary caretaker. Over the next few days, Minho recovered. The twins barely left his side. When he was finally allowed to walk, they held his hands on both sides, supporting him. The story of what happened spread throughout the Empire. How a human janitor saved the royal heirs. How the twins used their training to survive. How genuine care and respect had created something stronger than any security system. 5 years passed. The Human Principle Initiative brought thousands of human educators to Valorian space. At the same time, Valorian teachers went to Earth and other human worlds. Knowledge flowed both ways. Children across the Empire were being raised differently now, with more emphasis on emotional intelligence alongside technical skills. Prince Veltor and Princess Kixana grew into remarkable young people. They were brilliant, yes, but also kind. They understood both technology and people. They were being prepared to rule not through fear or tradition, but through wisdom and compassion. On a quiet afternoon, Minho's friend Jisoo came to visit. She now ran the cultural exchange program between Earth and the Valorian worlds. She was important, famous even, but she still made time to visit her old friend. She found Minho in a familiar place, the maintenance closet where everything had started 5 years ago. He was teaching the twins' younger sibling, a small child who had just hatched, how to fold towels and mix cleaning solutions. Some things never change, Jisoo said with a laugh. Minho smiled. Why change what works? The young royal child was concentrating hard on making a square fold, tongue sticking out slightly. Minho guided the small hands gently, patiently. You changed the galaxy, you know. Jisoo said. Humans aren't seen as just workers or immigrants anymore. We're seen as teachers, as people with valuable perspectives. That's because of you. Not because of me, Minho said. Because of them. He nodded at the twins who were helping their younger sibling now, showing the same patience Minho had shown them. They proved that caring about people, treating them as individuals, actually works. I just folded some towels. You did more than that? Maybe. But I didn't do it to be important. I did it because it needed to be done. Princess Kixana, now 11 years old, looked up from helping her sibling. Teacher Minho, can we go to the maintenance tunnels later? I want to show little Ixnal the engineering systems. After lessons, yes. Can we stop by the kitchens too? I promised Chef Drix I'd help him with his new recipe. We can do that. Prince Veltor was already taking notes on a data pad, planning their afternoon. If we take the route through Sector 7, we can stop by the new scholarship students' orientation. They wanted to meet us. Minho watched them plan and organize, these children who had once been impossible. Now they thought about others, made plans that included people, cared about the scholarship students who had come from Earth. That night, Minho sent a message home to his family on Earth. The debt had been paid off years ago, but he still wrote to them every week. Things are good here, he wrote. The twins are growing up well. The program is helping thousands of families. I'm happy. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. He didn't mention that he was famous. He didn't mention that historians were already writing about him. He didn't mention that his name would be remembered across 3 galaxies for centuries. He just wrote about the twins' progress, about the new students arriving from Earth, about simple things that mattered, because in the end, that was the human principle Queen Ixandra had talked about. Not grand gestures or great powers, just seeing people, caring about them, and doing what needed to be done with patience and kindness. The human janitor who achieved the impossible had done it by remembering the simplest truth. That everyone, even royal twins who seemed impossible, just needed someone to see them as they truly were and care about who they could become. And sometimes, the greatest changes in the galaxy started with something as simple as folding towels and being kind.